I'm sure at this point, most people do know the actor Iñaki Godoy. You know him as the man who brought Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece to life, with his infectious smile and vibrant Chilango energy which resembles Luffy a lot. Interestingly, not only is he the real-life Pirate King, but also he's becoming a master of languages including Spanish, English and Japanese. Today, as a celebration of the release of One Piece Season 2, we will look into his amazing journey as a language learner.
Nothing's gonna stand in our way! Yeah!
Born in 2003 in Mexico City, Iñaki wasn't just a dreamer, he was a performer from day one. At just 4 years old, he started his career. He appeared as a child actor on Mexican TV dramas and movies. After spending a decade, he successfully crossed over into the English language market in Netflix series of One Piece. For most of his childhood, he spoke only his native language, which is Spanish. But then in this video, he revealed how he motivated to study English and mastered it.
Sixth fact about me, one of the reasons I learned to speak good English is because at camp a girl came up to me and asked me to go dance on Friday because there was going to be a party so she could be her date. And I couldn't understand her because I didn't speak good English. So from that moment on, I realized how geeky I was and I said, you know what, I have to get my act together. I'm not going to let him miss another opportunity with a girl because I couldn't understand her. So from that moment on, I read my books and we got on a little better.
A desire to start talking to your crush in her language is an absolute legitimate motivation for learning a new language, don't you think? But what is more impressive is that he speaks actually really good English at this point when this interview was taken, which was 2 years ago.
Our heart and passion into this.
We're gonna need a real pirate ship worthy of the Straw Hat crew.
Which presumably, given that he was only 18 years old when he was chosen as Luffy and got quickly into the English filming scene, it really finalized his journey of learning English to be a bilingual level.
The One Piece live action, we're all putting our heart and passion into this.
We're gonna need a real pirate ship worthy of the Straw Hat crew.
But what is more impressive is that he already started to learn a new language, which is completely different from the languages that he speaks, which is the Japanese language. As a Japanese teacher, I would like to quickly review his interview in Japanese, apparently for the first time in his life, speaking in Japanese in his interview. And we can learn from him the vocabulary and the grammar that he uses, and most of the time I would love to give a compliment of how he quickly got into this level. And finally, I would like to give an assessment of his level of Japanese using JLPT grade. Let's get into it.
快速王に俺はなる。日本の皆さんこんにちは、Iñaki Godoyです。はじめまして。ワンピースが大好きな皆さんと会えたことはとっても嬉しかった。私も皆さんと同じワンピースが大好きだから、とても嬉しかった。
First of all, I think he really is an energetic person, just like Luffy. He speaks very fast as to a person who's just started learning Japanese. And I think it is a really good, great achievement because a lot of people struggle to speak faster. So yes, in the first place, he speaks really fast, just like he speaks Spanish, I think. And also, him being a native Spanish speaker really helps a lot in Japanese because compared to English, Spanish language has more phonetical similarities with the Japanese language. So I can say that his pronunciation is very natural, even though he has some intonations being a bit different from how native speakers speak. I think it's very acceptable level that everyone wants to just sort of open up, talking to him.
ステージで、日本語で初めてだったから最初にちょっと心配だったけどできました。このインタビューも日本語で初めてインタビューです。だからゆっくりで優しい日本語で話します。OK。ありがとうございます。日本はとっても大好き。文化とか景色とか食べ物、ビデオゲーム、アニメ、ミスター・チルドレン、たくさん好きなものがあります。日本は僕のお気に入り国だと思います。とても大好き。ミスター・チルドレン、イノセント・ワールド、カラオケに行くとき、いつも歌う。イノセント・ワールド、知ってるね。ミスター・チルドレン、すごい。
So it's quite interesting to see that he already uses different pronouns for himself. What I mean by pronouns is that in Japanese you have different ways of saying I, especially for male. And he first used watashi. Watashi is very widely used, whether female or male. Anyone can use this pronoun. However, for male, watashi is a bit more formal way of calling yourself. So when he was talking about himself being in interviews or in the event, thoughts around it, he just naturally used watashi, which is very interesting. He actually matches already the pronoun of watashi and the politeness in speech. But later, when he started to talk about Japan, he said, 僕のお気に入りの国だと思います。That is now using 僕, which is a more neutral version of I for male. So you can actually use this pronoun for either casual setting and more polite or let's say formal setting. So it's actually quite cool that he uses all of the pronouns interchangeably. And I really like he uses multiple times とても, which means very. I think I really like this in the way that he speaks that way. But if you want to have more vocabulary to say very, then there are many ways. For example, you can say すごく好きです. Or めっちゃ好きです。超好きです. They're more casual and it's not really formal setting. And also you can use 本当に. 本当に is like truly. We use quite a lot in a very equal way of saying very. So you can say something like とても好きです。すごく好きです。超好きです。めっちゃ好きです。And then finally 本当に好きです。
人によるけど、たくさん本を読んだり、いい先生に教えてくれたり、ポッドキャストを聞いたり、たくさんことを書いたりしたら、文法と言葉が分かるようになると思います。でも、時間がたくさんかかります。
And this topic is definitely something relevant to what I'm talking about today. I think he really used different complex grammar in this part. For example, he used 人による. That basically means depends on the person. による is the part saying depends. But in English, you can actually say just, oh, depends. However, in Japanese, you can't really do that. You have to have what depends. So in which case you have to have hito, which is a person, and say hito ni yoru, depends on this person, depends on the person. Or you can say kuni ni yoru, depends on the country, or ie ni yoru, depends on the house. Whatever it is, basically. And also he used tari and tari suru. This is around N5 or to N4 grammar. And it means to list up different activities that you do or you did. So, for example, if you say 食べたり寝たり, that makes it I did things like eating and sleeping. And also, he did ようになる. This is a very, very good grammar. This ようになる by adding this after present tense verb sentence. you can actually make that as a starting point of a routine, not a starting point of a single action. So, for example, you can say, oh, I started to be able to speak Japanese. That is routine. Let's say it is something that you achieved to do it permanently. So you can actually start saying 日本語が話せるようになりました。He used one grammatical mistake, which is to do with くれる、あげる、もらう. This is a really complex grammar. The level is around N4, let's say. However, the topic is very in depth. But anyway, the small mistake here was that いい先生に教えてくれたり. So くれる and あげる, they always need the subject as a giver, and もらう, you need the subject as a receiver. So when it comes to his sentence, he said 先生に, that makes it in あげるくれる sentence the receiver. But I think he wanted to say he received the teaching from the teacher. So he was meant to use もらう, or he should have used 先生が教えてくれたり or 先生に教えてもらったり. Very, very complex topic. I would actually make a separate video about this, but I even feel very difficult to persuade my students to comprehend.
ルフィと似ているところ、もちろんあります。もちろん。二人は冒険が大好きで、友達を作るのが得意で、食べ過ぎるところも似ています。違いところもあるけど、ルフィがたくさんことを教えてくれました。だから多分ちょっと似ています。多分2年ぐらい前船旅に行きました。ルフィのように、楽しかった。でもワンピースの方が本当の船よりもっと楽しいです。本当の船でいつも掃除しなければいけない。ちょっと大変。面白い動物が、多分あんまりない。ワンピースほどラブンがない。
There are a couple of good grammar here. He said, 掃除しなければいけない. That is なければいけない grammar, which is actually grammatically it's very, very simple, but then it's a quite mouthful grammar, to be honest with you, because it goes しなければいけない, しなければならない. This is really hard for people to pronounce, but actually he pronounced very, very flawlessly, so that's a really impressive thing. And also he said ほどない. One Piece ほど面白い動物がいない. So ほどない makes it something like not as much as this. So here it is saying they're not interested in animals as much as in One Piece.
ルフィの考え方を守ります。ルフィの考え方といえば、一つ目、ルフィにとって食べ物、友達、保険、ワンピースが一番大切なことです。二つ目、ルフィは何も怖くない。死ぬのが怖くない。三つ目は、ルフィ、ヒーローになりたくない。海賊です。海賊は何でもできる。それです。その考え方を守ります。
Here, I think his speech is very, very flawless, and then I really got nothing to talk about too much. But I think the vocabulary that I want to point out, that it's a very good, useful vocabulary for beginners, which is to say first, second, third, and so on. This is a combination with the vocabulary counter to. When you count ideas and objects, we use つ counter to say 一つ、二つ、三つ、四つ、五つ、六つ、七つ、八つ、九つ. That's it. You can basically add め after to say 一つ目、二つ目、三つ目. That makes it first, second, third. So very useful vocabulary on top of what you already knew if you already worked on 2 counter.
カストはどんな人？どんな人？優しくて、いい友達です。仲間にたくさんことを教えてもらった。例えば、タスさん、3時の俳優、3時の、演技、そうです。タスさん、3時の演技のために、演技、OK、もう一度。タスさん、3時の演技のために、1年でタイコンドーを習いました。それを見た僕はびっくりして、日本語の勉強をしてた時、タスさんのように私も頑張ったら何でもできると思っていました。そういう話がたくさんあります。私の仲間が、たくさんことを教えてもらいました。教えてくれました？わからない。すいません。
どっちも合ってます。
So I really like how he got stuck on the word acting, which is engi. I think it sounds very, very simple, but I think he got some sort of confusion between the other words like engeki. Engeki means theatre play, and engi is acting, so they very sound similar. After he really made a really good sentence with good grammar, that is, タズさんのように頑張ったら何でもできると思いました。The good part is のように is just like someone, like this person. に is making よ as an adverb, so you can say のような or のよwhatever it is. Here he again got stuck on this くれる、あげる、もらう things. While the staff said it's okay, both of them work actually fine. And that's true, actually native speakers would actually understand what you meant. But if you don't want to make mistakes, always make sure the subject in the right place. So, もらう receiver the subject, くれる あげる giver the subject.So he started with 私の仲間が So that's the subject, isn't it? So you have to use くれました for this instance.
OK。マケンジュさん、そんなにミステリアスじゃない。働いた後、2ヶ月ぐらい毎日一緒にトレーニングをして、その後、時々時間があった時、一緒にボードゲームをした。カタン知ってる？カタン、お気に入りゲームです。マケニュさんとカのよくして僕がいつも勝つ、僕が負けたことがない、日本語といえば、マケニュさん少し教えてくれました、でも英語に慣れたから、日本語であんまり話さない、だから少しだけ教えてくれました。でも教えてくれた。
I like how Iñaki reveals that Makenu is not that mysterious, and I suppose so. I think he's such a friendly character in the first place. However, I think his presence on TV and media, basically he wants to keep his style, but I'm sure he's very, very nice guy. But anyway, it's so wholesome to hear that they play Catan together.I really like Catan, so I know why they are playing so much. Anyway, he made a couple of good points. One is ことがない as in ことがある. ことがある means have an experience of. So here he's saying 負けたことがない. So he never lost against Makenyu. And also he said といえば, which actually, as you can see in the subtitle, Japanese producers changed it to に関して. Basically, といえば is like speaking about something. However, it sort of talks about like really typical image of something. So, for example, 日本といえば寿司です. Speaking about Japan, what comes up your mind is sushi.Whereas if you use に関して that makes it more like regarding. So 日本に関して about Japan. So here it was a bit better to understand with に関して. But I really give up credit to him that he used といえば it's a really good grammar anyway.
ルフィが食べている場面楽しみにしてください。前よりもっと食べる。そうです。それだけ。私にとってルフィ食べている場面は撮影の時、何もいなかった。ラブーンと巨人がなかった。空と話しているかと思っていた。だからラブーンと巨人を見た時とてもびっくりしました。あ、本物ですね。すごい。ラブーン大好きって。ラブーンとても大好き。可愛すぎる。チョッパーと同じ。二人は可愛すぎる。僕のお気に入りキャラクター。チョッパーも可愛くて医者。
So here again he made a really good sentence saying 空と話しているかと思った。So かと思った makes it I thought as if basically. So anything comes before か becomes a metaphor. So it really didn't happen, but you want to say it that way. So this one is kind of saying as if I was talking to a sky. Very nice.
日本のドラマでアクティングすごい日本のドラマテレビのドラマすごいマケンユさん Yes 僕がマケンユの世界中一番ファンですマケンユがとっても大好きマケンユ Yesイニャキが大好き。私もイニャキとっても大好き。かっこいい俳優です。かっこいい。
Here, I just sort of like how this producer sort of wanted to talk about Makenyu, and Iñaki did his best to sort of like give a compliment about Makenyu. But then equally, after he was told everyone likes Iñaki, and then the way how he responded, like, oh, I like myself too. This is absolutely Chilango energy that I think no one actually says in Japanese, to be honest with you, because Japanese people would say, oh no, I'm not like that. I'm just a humble being that I don't accept your compliments. However, this is the beauty of a mixture of a culture and a language, in my opinion, that you express yourself in your way in different languages. Sometimes it's not really culturally, aligned, but at the same time, I think that's exactly how language develops, and I really like the way he takes in a very Chilango way the Japanese.
ルフィ演じれば演じるほどもっと好きになります。とても楽しんでいる。だから長い期間ルフィの演技を続けたいです。チャンスがあれば、もちろん終わりまでチャンスがあれば、でもわからない。
So again, a couple of good grammar he used in this section. The first one is from ルフィを演じれば演じるほどもっと好きになります。So this ばほど is the more you do, the more it comes. So 演じるmeans to play. So he said 演じれば演じるほど. Repeating twice with ば and ほど makes the emphasis of the more you do. So the more you play. And then he goes もっと好きになります. So that's the part where he says the more he likes this, whether it's to be a Luffy or to be the part of the production. And then he also went to this れば. So he said チャンスがあれば. Essentially, this last attachment means if, but you can actually do different ifs. For example, tara or nara or anything like that. However, this reba is specifically for more optimistic ideas, so optimistic hypothesis. So チャンスがあれば is a perfect combination with the context saying that if I hopefully have a chance. So a couple of really good grammar that you should consider using.
いつか自然な日本語で話したり、映画の監督になったり、世界中の友達を作ったり、たくさん本を読んだり、美味しい食べ物を食べたりしたい。 日本にいる時毎日美味しい食べ物を食べる。昨日焼肉を食べた。美味しかった。今日ちょっと忙しかったから、あんまり食べなかったけど、おにぎり食べた。肉入っていたおにぎりを食べた。美味しかった。美味しかった。おすすめです。肉が大好き。肉が大好きだから、ルフィになったね。多分。お寿司肉難しい。次の質問。難しすぎる。わからない。日本語で話せない。すいません。わからない。
And obviously, this question is very difficult for anyone, niku or sushi. So yes, I understand his struggle answering this question.
シネマトゥデイを見ている皆さん、ワンピースシーズン2を楽しみに待っててね。ありがとうございました。バイバイ。気をつけて。
So my overall assessment on his speech.Let's say the grammar that he uses, it's mostly around N4 to N3 level. However, the most important thing is that he really uses naturally and feel very comfortable using N4 and 3 grammars. That being said, grammatically, his level is obviously around that, but his level of speaking can actually be so much better.than this assessment. So I would say his confidence and the way he carries out his speaking, to me, it's about N2 to N3 level. Obviously, won't go N2 because N2 is a very high level, but most definitely, I think the way he speaks can actually go around N3 level for sure. And obviously, his confidence and friendliness is priceless.And this is something that everyone needs to learn from him. That you should be confident no matter what you say. Of course, you make mistakes because you are learning the language, but just be confident and talk more. That's the most important thing when it comes to learning any languages. So, yes, he's a very good example of a successful speaker, whether in English or Japanese.So that is all from me. That was a very wholesome interview. I really like his energy. So hopefully everyone is going to enjoy the season 2. And let's hope that Iñaki will continue his journey to be a fluent speaker in Japanese, which is not that far for him. And hopefully I can review his Japanese once again. But anyway, we can learn a lot from him.So thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next video.